My friend that I let to live in my apartment rent-free told her colleagues that I was abusing her, so I made it come true and booted her out. I have my own 2-bedroom apartment that used to belong to my uncle. I made a friend during my uni years I'll call Mary. Mary had quite a hard home life, too long to detail here. I let her know that if she ever needed my help, she could always rely on me no matter what. When we graduated I asked her to move in with me rent-free. She tried to pay but I knew she had a lot of debt trying to pay for uni, so I told her no and to spend her money freeing herself from it. She was so thankful for this, and I loved having her live with me. We never fought about anything. Both of us have the same cleaning habits and TV interests, so there's never any arguments over the remote or who has to take out the bins, etc. Tonight we were out at a super fancy restaurant in London as Mary had finally paid off the last of her debt, secured herself an amazing promotion at her job, and also finally passed her driving test. All these achievements in the same month were more than deserving of an award, so we splashed out. It was me, Mary, 4 of her work friends, and 2 friends we've known since uni. It was a great night, until I handed Mary a card saying amazing she is and how lucky I am to have her as my best friend, with quite a bit of cash inside to put towards her first car. She started crying and thanking me and we hugged for a long time. When she pulled away I told her I was so proud of her for kicking life in the butt, becoming successful, and showing her dad that his dickhead ways couldn't keep her down. After how she'd struggled through uni, pushing pennies together, and working poop jobs, seeing her in her dream career and being such an accomplished woman is absolutely inspiring to me. She looked mad and said, "Please don't do that. You know I don't like it when you do that." She'd never said anything like this to me, ever, so I have no idea where this was coming from. I apologized and said that I didn't realize saying these things would upset her as it's never been my intention. She just scoffed and rolled her eyes, and when I looked up at her colleagues they were all shaking their heads at me and glaring. I felt so awkward I wanted to shrink back into my own skin, and I was mortified that I hurt Mary. Mary didn't talk to me for the rest of the night and ignored me at the table. When we split up to head home, none of her colleagues even looked at me as they left. I said sorry to Mary as she was heading to her room to turn in, but she just shrugged me off, told me she was tired and that we'll talk in the morning. I'm so anxious that she'll want to move out or never talk to me again. I keep going over every interaction in my head to see if I crossed a line in the past, but she never gave any indication that I upset her saying these things before. All her colleagues messaged me saying I was an asshole for saying those things to her and belittling her, but I never ever meant any of those things like that. Update 1, 6:30 a.m. So I'm even more confused than ever right now. After staying up all night and being constantly on the verge of tears, I finally heard my roommate moving around the kitchen, so I went to talk to her. She acted totally normal and started talking to me about some drama at her work while I just stood there kind of unsure what was happening or what to do. So I apologized again. She looked up at me in confusion and said, "Why are you sorry?" I reminded her of last night and how mad she was. Then she laughed and said it doesn't matter, don't worry about it, and then continued making breakfast. I asked if I'd stepped over a line last night, if the money was too much and if I made her feel inferior, and she said nope. We're cool. It doesn't matter. I think everyone just misunderstood the situation and you're taking things to heart a little too much. I just am even more confused than ever. I told her about her friends texting me, telling me that what I said was belittling and that I was an asshole, and she just shrugged and said they probably misread things and she'll talk to them. But I'm just so winded. I'm so tired because I haven't slept because I thought she hated me, that I'd hurt her and she'd never speak to me again. But she's fine, like she's completely normal and just chatting with me as if last night never happened, but I'm just so confused. After seeing so many Uda comments I thought I'd really crossed a line this time, but she's not fazed at all. She seemed too upset, ignored me for the rest of the night, and her coworkers treated me like a criminal, but everything's okay I guess? I don't know anymore. I'm tired and I'm going to sleep, but things still seem unresolved to me. I'm going to talk to her about it when she comes back from work today because her reaction still really bothers me. Update 2, 10 a.m. I got a call from one of the uni friends who was at the dinner last night and we had a chat. She asked me if everything was okay between me and Mary, as she said she'd never seen Mary snap at me like that until last night. I filled her in on everything that we'd talked about and how confused I was as well. She reaffirmed many of my feelings about this being very out of character for Mary, as she had also congratulated Mary and said similar things, as well as given her a bit of money in a card, along with an expensive gift, as did many of the others. After talking to my friend, I've decided that I need to have a long sit down with Mary to clear things up, and it's not only me who's confused by her behavior. Both the uni friends are coming round later to have a chat, since now we're honestly quite concerned about her. Her friends have no let up on their text to me, so I don't think she's spoken to them. One said I couldn't try and sweep this under the carpet, which is like what? I'm thinking of blocking all of them as they just won't leave me alone. Update 3, 4 p.m. I talked to both of them when they came round in the afternoon and they both denied any of that. The one I had spoken to earlier on the phone, we'll call Claire, said she'd call one of the work colleagues that she knows slightly well in order to clear things up. Let's call the colleague Jane. Jane turned up at the flat and instantly looked pissed. I almost wanted to hide behind the kitchen counter when she came in glaring daggers at me. We all sat down and I let Jane know that I'd spoken to Mary about last night and that she was fine, but I was still confused. Jane then laughed and said, "Oh, don't try that poop with me. You can't just pretend now that you've been exposed in public." The three of us looked at her without saying a word as we were all confused now. Claire asked her what she meant and Jane said that she knew how I really treated Mary. We both asked her to elaborate, and she stood up and went on this tirade about how I apparently regularly abuse and belittle Mary, then intimidate her into saying nothing about it and put on a smile for others. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry at this point. She then showed me her text with Mary where Mary wrote to her in distress about being locked in her room because I was having a meltdown about her making friends at work, something that never happened. Claire and my other friend took the phone and looked through the messages as well, and I had to stop reading them as they all said stuff about how Mary was afraid of me and that I trapped her here and was extorting rent out of her. It all just leaves me numb and dead inside. Eventually Claire got to a point where Mary said I'd cancelled her 21st birthday at uni and told her she wasn't allowed to go out. The things is, Claire and my other friend were at Mary's 21st birthday, which I'd put over £500 towards to have a themed Great Gatsby night she'd always wanted, which in the messages she was claiming never happened. We went over a lot of the stuff in the messages and realized that Mary had been spreading lies about me to all her colleagues about how I was abusive and she couldn't move out because I was charging her so much rent money. This absolutely shattered me. Mary was like a sister to me through our uni years, and I can't fathom why she'd say any of these things. It took a long time, but after Claire and my friend went over all the accusations with Jane and I pulled up my bank details to show that Mary never makes a single payment to me except for her half of the bills, she seemed to cool down and settled into the same confusion we were all feeling. She let us know that Mary told all of her colleagues this story and that the reason they were mad at me is because Mary said I like to use a manipulation tactic where I pretend I support her through everything but use her past against whenever we're in private. They all thought that's what I had been doing last night, that everything I said was meant as a backhanded compliment. Honestly, I'm so just pissed about everything. I can't even put into words the hurt and betrayal I feel that she'd spread these lies about me. For what reason? What benefit? I could never lift a finger to hurt her, but she tells everyone at her work that I isolate her from the world? Claire had to calm me down as I couldn't stop crying no matter what I did for ages. It was quite embarrassing, but I just couldn't do anything else. Now I'm a little more level-headed, still mad but not crying anymore. I don't even want to look at Mary again. My friends have told me not to make hasty decisions. Even Claire said she was disgusted by the things Mary was saying about me in the text when everyone knows them not to be true. I know that I probably won't be able to clear my name with her colleagues, but I don't really care about that. I just want to know why Mary said those things about me. Jane went quiet by the end of our discussion and left without saying much, so I don't know what that means for me in her eyes. My two friends are staying with me for the rest of the day until Mary comes home. We've all got a lot of questions for her to answer. Final update, 10:15 p.m. When she got home and saw the three of us watching television, she got excited and said she'd make popcorn, but Claire took the lead and told her to sit down. She looked confused but complied. Claire led everything. I didn't really know what to say to Mary at all and could barely make eye contact with her. Claire told her that Jane had been round and yelled at me for being an abuser and a bully and asked her why she'd say those things. Mary acted confused and said that it must all just be a miscommunication, that Jane just twists things sometimes and she must have misunderstood stuff she'd said. Then Claire asked about the text messages and started mentioning each event that Mary had cried to Jane about me being an awful person. Jane went quiet and then tried to say it was a work joke, but Claire wasn't having any of it. She pushed harder about all of this and eventually Mary broke. She started crying and telling us that she never meant any of it, that it was a stupid thing and it shouldn't matter, that she loved me with everything she had, and it was just a stupid story that went too far. She started begging me for forgiveness, but I was just so tired and still am. I looked her in the eyes for the first time and told her she had a week to find a place and move out. Then she started really bawling her eyes out and begging me to let her stay, that she didn't think it would matter because I don't work with them, but I told her I was not having that kind of bullshit in my life. I then said, so do you just make up lies about everyone in your life? Is any of it real? She went really quiet, dead silent at that point. I didn't want to believe it, but the way she was looking at me and the lies she'd made up about me abusing her had me questioning everything she'd ever told me when we were at uni together, about her dad beating her mom, about her being homeless from 16 until they divorced. I then told her to get her mom on the phone and she panicked and begged me not to. Claire then realized where I was going with this and asked her if everything we'd ever been told about her dad had been true, and she cracked and said she may have embellished a few things. I'm so effing fuming at this point. Who the F makes up this kind of twisted poop? For what benefit? I can't even write everything that was said as it just resorted into a screaming match between all four of us as we learned that Mary's tragic life story had been nothing but a concoction to gain sympathy from others. Her parents are divorced but there was no abuse involved, they just fell out of love and split. I had to learn this by calling her mother myself later on to get clarity. I'd never said a word to her mom about anything in the past because Mary had warned me against it. She said I could always be open with her about everything as she wasn't ashamed, but her mom was sensitive and didn't want to talk about it. So it turns out my best friend is a master manipulator and probably always has been. I am so tired and exhausted of this whole nightmare. This will be my last update as I'm done. I came here seeking help and advice to find a way to mend a mistake I'd made with a trusted friend, but it turns out that last 7 years have been built on a lie. I'm effing done. With Mary, with everything. I don't want to see her again. I know she can afford her own place so I don't feel bad about kicking her out. I don't care what she does now. I just know that I don't want her around anymore. I think I'm going to book myself some therapy sessions after all of this poop. Final update. Mary moved out the following Saturday of the incident. She spent the following days after the blow-up moping around the flat and wanting to talk to me, but I refused and told her I needed space. Her mom came on the weekend to help her pack up her things as Mary was going to move back in with her. Her mom cleared up a lot of the questions I'd had on my mind. I'd always been told by Mary that her dad had been abusive, but her mom had loved him so much she wouldn't leave him, so she left home and was homeless when she was 14. sleeping under benches in train stations, just so she didn't have to be in the house with him. She only moved back in when her mom finally got the guts to divorce her dad. This story I had believed for 7 years turned out to be completely fake. Not only was Mary never homeless, but her father was never abusive and loved both her and her mom very much. The reason I never saw him around was because he'd moved to Australia to pursue his career, which was the real reason for the divorce. He loved his family but wanted success even more, so he left. Her mom told me that Mary's dad was always inviting her over for the summer holidays, but Mary never went because she hates flying. The day she moved out I stayed in my room and just hid away, but she knocked on my door before she left, and I answered. I still wanted to say goodbye. She had been my closest friend for so long that it didn't feel right just letting her fade out of my life without a send-off. She asked me if I wanted the money I gave her for her new car back, but I said no and told her to use it instead for therapy. She cried a lot and tried to hug me, but I kept her at a distance. I let her know this would be the final time we would ever see or speak to each other. I just couldn't be around her anymore with the knowledge of what she'd done. She left sobbing, and when she was gone, my little town flat felt suddenly bigger than it ever had before. It's been hard adjusting to being alone in this place. For the first week she was gone, I still expected to see her in the kitchen every morning, or on the sofa when I got home. It was unsettling to say the least. I had my first therapy appointment last week, and I think it actually went well. I haven't been to therapy since I was in school, so I was very nervous to begin with, but my therapist is a very lovely lady who helped me understand that Mary's lies were her own making and I had nothing to do with their creation. A lot of people said she was probably a compulsive liar, maybe even a narcissist, and she seemed to agree loosely with that idea from what she'd heard. In yet another revelation, I met with Jane for coffee as she'd asked me to meet up and clear up some details. She told me she'd been wondering about why Mary would make me the target of her abuse story and started asking people in her office about the things Mary had said about me in the past. One that stood out was a painter. They work in art restoration and distribution, who used his art as a means of channeling his traumatic history with his abusive stepmother. Apparently, Mary had taken quite a liking to him, and so she had first told him about her abuse as a way of getting closer to him. She'd mentioned fancying him in the past, but I didn't think she'd go to such lengths to create a connection between them. He'd been furious when he heard the truth, and now doesn't speak to her anymore. Jane told me not many people do now. They were now all worried that she'd make up stuff about them and get them in trouble at work, so they're keeping her at arm's length as a result. I felt a bit bad when I heard this, as I know that Mary is having a miserable time with our friendship group kicking her out as well. Jane apologized to me, but I told her she had nothing to be sorry about, that this was all Mary and she was only trying to protect what she thought was an abused friend. We left each other on good terms, but we don't have much in common, so I doubt we'll be friends in the future. Claire came to stay with me for a bit, which has helped with the loneliness a little. It's hard to be alone after having someone practically attached to your hip with you for so long.